Hello, today I will be discussing the topic of assessment and treatment of noncompliance by Diana Deshields. The objectives I will be discussing are studies that have been conducted, assessment methods, interventions, gaps and barriers, and tactics for further understanding of noncompliance behaviors. The definition of noncompliance pertains to the refusal to accomplish a task after the request has been set in place. No, Catherine!
No.
Hello, my name is Diana Deshields, and I am currently taking EDSE 625, and today I will be discussing the topic pertaining to assessment and treatment of noncompliance. The objectives I will be discussing are studies that have been conducted, assessment methods, interventions, gaps and barriers, tactics for further understanding of noncompliance behaviors. The definition of noncompliance is the refusal to accomplish a task after the request has been set in place. A little bit of background. With noncompliance, as it is the refusal to accomplish tasks, whether providing the individuals with directions or demanding them to do something or follow directions, these actions can appear in typically developed children and those with intellectual disabilities. Although characteristics of noncompliance can be difficult at times, fortunately there are research findings that are evidence-based treatments that can be effective with children. There are also interventions that have been implemented into treatment plans that have resulted into being beneficial not only for the child, but for their parents. The relevance to the field is in the applied behavioral analysis ABA field, being that noncompliance can occur in any circumstance. There needs to be an understanding to what noncompliance is and the interventions that have been studied in order to help future clients. These findings conducted can assist BCBAs in effective assessments, interventions, and treatments of noncompliance that have been effective, being that they are evidence-based treatments. There have been a variety of studies included with noncompliance. Kunavatana and Normand, a study was conducted to determine the function and then treatment of the participants' noncompliance. 5 typically developing preschool-age children were chosen to participate. There was a baseline condition, 3-step guided compliance procedure, high PEAT instruction sequence, and eye contact procedure in their study. The dependent variable was the percent of compliance, and the independent variable was the session number. Each child exhibited high compliance in at least one of the conditions in comparison to the other, and therefore a treatment was able to prescribe for each child. One child, regardless of treatment, did not see an increase in compliance at the end of the study. Going forward with this presentation, I will be discussing other studies. Lipschultz and Welder, an assessment that can be beneficial in identifying noncompliance and compliance in children, and how research was evaluated concerning tactics that are used for noncompliance. Independent variable are the assessments and interventions, and the dependent variable are the variety of assessments and interventions being used in their results. The research reviewed assessments that were founded, which are indirect, direct, and experimental. 2 types of direct assessments: unstructured, which involves having a client's caregiver portraying themselves with their usual behaviors, and structured, which entails evaluating the behavior, meaning to when it occurs. Experimental assessments allow for one to use the experiment as a playing field in order to have an understanding to when noncompliance behaviors occur. Noncompliance to where assessments are not needed and interventions can be beneficial, such as antecedent-based interventions and consequence-based interventions. Antecedent-based interventions alters a stimuli in order to view wanted compliance, and consequence-based interventions allows for one alter the stimuli after presenting an instruction. With antecedent-based interventions, as it is helpful in guiding compliance, there are 2 forms: alpha instructions, which entails distributing commands, and beta instructions, which are not successful in relation to commands. For consequence-based interventions, there are guided compliance, differential reinforcement, extinction, timeout, and reprimands. Richmond, a study was conducted with 5 participants exhibiting noncompliance. 3 of the participants were typically developing children, and the other 2 had been diagnosed with developmental delays. There was a baseline parent instruction training procedure, post-instruction procedure, and generalization probes. The dependent variable was the percent of occurrence of compliance. The independent variable is the number of sessions the results showed after the parent instruction phrase percent of occurrence of compliance increased significantly. Moreover, during generalization probes, compliance seemed to be generalized. Rodriguez, Thompson, and Bainham, as you can see here, they studied and conducted concerning attention and escape of noncompliance in preschool children. They collected data in an observation room to where the participants did not have the ability to observe the data collectors. The results of the experiment entailed attention to showing to having a high compliance rate, then escape. The independent variable entailed the researchers having control of the instructions for compliance. The dependent variable would entail how the participants reacted to specific instruction when commanded. Rodvet and Milberg study that was conducted concerning reliable strategies that can assist in situations where noncompliance actions are presented. With this study, they used timeouts and high probability requests. And as you can see here, to collect data, they did so by using an experimental design by the child's ability to show compliance when presented with request, along with parents' reaction, which would be attention and praise. When the study was conducted, compliance was shown to improve for only one child, along with actions of timeout showing similar data for both children. Umbret and Blair did a study in order to test what treatments work best to assist with non-compliant behavior exhibited by the participant. They took appropriate data of the problem behaviors which pertain to non-compliance and aggression. And as you can see here, you can see the phases of how the study was conducted. Wilger, Regan, and Razy, a study was conducted with 2 preschoolers of a preferred and non-preferred control condition was used. And as you can see here, a DRA phase was used. During the DRA phase, compliance was high, but returned to lower frequencies for both students when they returned to the baseline. Assessment and methods. There are latency criterion, recording when a response is not accomplished within 5 seconds of the request, functional behavioral assessment, circumstances to where problem behavior occurs in the environment. There's indirect methods of the caregiver's standpoint of the problem behavior. And with this, with the interviews, there's a motivation assessment scale, functional analysis screening tool, question about behavioral function, and a functional assessment interview. Continued, there's direct assessment. Problem behaviors recurred upon happening in the behavior of the child after. Does not allow for data collector when a non-compliance actually occurs. There's structured observations and unstructured observations. Structured, arranging the environment when the problem behavior occurs. Unstructured, during the observation, the environment does not change and the caregivers are asked not to change the behaviors. The interventions, there's antecedent-based interventions. They're effective in showing child's compliance. There's alpha instruction, effective commands, one-step instruction within a 5-second interval. There's chain, vague, and question directions, along with beta instructions, which are ineffective commands, and consequence-based interventions with the guided compliance providing more effective prompts. There's also differential reinforcement of compliance. Providing reinforcement increases the likelihood of compliance when instructions are provided. There's extinction, eliminating the problem behavior while using interventions to distract from the noncompliance. There are also timeouts, taking the child away from the environment to where their noncompliance exists, along with reprimands, providing a verbal reprimand when a child is showing noncompliance. The gaps and barriers, as it varies in each individual, to which is why there needs to be further research when conducting non-compliance tactics and where it occurs in specific environments. As it is known, one assessment may work for a client, but it doesn't mean it will work for the other. There needs to be questioning in the validity The question assessments concern direct and indirect assessments. There are questions concerning interventions and their validity on whether they are evidence-based, along with further research on adults. What can be done? Further research can be conducted to provide validity in these interventions or findings, along with research adults concerning their noncompliance. In terms of, do children fade away from such behaviors once they become adults? There needs to be an understanding of which assessments or interventions work best for clients. Here are my references, and thank you so much for listening to my presentation.